Hello my friends. Okay, this video here I've been tagged. I have several questions I need to answer for a friend. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read the read the question and then answer. Okay, so the first question is, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about learning languages? What is it? I think there are two things I'll talk about. The first one is learning a language as an adult. A lot of people believe that as an adult we can't learn another language. We feel that that's only something a child can do. There's this thing going around, people saying, oh, children pick up languages really quick. Um, we can't pick them up that fast, so we might as well not even try to learn another language. But that's not true. I mean, there's a lot of people out there learning languages. There are people over 50 learning languages swiftly. So that's one of the misconceptions. The second one is, what is it? The people, they believe that you actually have to go to another country to learn a language. You can't possibly learn it in your own country. That's not true either. You can learn a language to a good level in your own country. Now, if you're talking about like native, like you're trying to be like a native speaker, then perhaps it will be ideal to go to that country and live there for quite some time. Now, maybe you can get to that level in your own country, but I think that had better be the only language you're studying. But other than that, yeah, you probably want to go over to the country. So, yeah, I think you can learn a language in your own country. So, a lot of people don't believe that's true. Don't believe that's possible. All right. Let's see. What have been your biggest insights regarding language learning throughout life? Hmm. Biggest insights. Definitely the reward. I think learning a language is high rewarding, and I didn't realize that until after a few years, after like what 5 years later of studying languages, I was meeting new people, started changing. I had, you see, before I started learning language, I had misconceptions about different cultures and language. And after picking up these languages, the languages totally destroyed my misconceptions. And I think that's a reward in itself. I have a good understanding of different cultures, very open minded. That's another high reward. And yeah, I think that's probably the most important reward is being open minded. A lot of people don't have open minds when it comes to different cultures. So that in itself is very, very high rewarding. Very, very high rewarding. So let's see, number three. I often say that people have a language learning blueprint. That is some deep rooted belief about how far they will be able to go with the language. Many people can't really imagine themselves reaching high levels of fluency, so they never will. Do you have any thoughts on this? Well, I talked about this a while back. I think anyone, first of all, anyone can learn language to a high level of fluency, but most people will set their goals. Maybe they don't want to become be on a high level of fluency. They just want to be basic fluency. So that's the first thing. People have their own goals. Um, the second thing is when you're talking about high level fluency, that makes me think of like a native level. And again, if you want to become a native like in a language, you will have to go be immersed totally in that culture. It's very important. So I think if the individual is serious about the language, it's in his or her heart, I think they will reach that level. If they want to, they will do whatever it takes to get to that level. So it's definitely possible. I mean, look at the foreigners that come here. A lot of foreigners that come here, they go to school and they get a job. They like when they first, like for example, like I'll take my wife. Like when she first came here, she couldn't really speak English that well, you know. But after going to school and getting a job here, being immersed in the culture for so long, she's able to speak on a high level. Her English is really good. So it's definitely possible. So it's all up to the individual. So okay, question number 4. What would you say to people who have lost all motivation due to past frustration and feel Learning a language is too difficult a task, only accessible to an elite few. Well, the frustration, if you're frustrated, if you're, I don't know, I would say that the first thing, they need to have this language learning thing in their heart. If it's not in their heart, then they're not going to get far with it. That's the first thing. You got to have that passion. And the second thing is you want to find like-minded people. Those people who are like-minded. The like-minded people are those people who are interested in the language like you are, and they're positive and they're very supportive. They're very enthusiastic for learning language like you are. You want to be around those type of people. So that will take away all the frustration and the it's impossible. You have to be a special person with a gift to learn language. Anybody can learn a language, but you have to make sure you take those things in consideration first. You have to have an environment of like-minded people, and you have to have it in your heart. Be very enthusiastic about learning the language. So let's see. The next question: do you believe there are certain qualities all successful language learners possess, regardless of the method they use? If so, which ones? I think it's quite obvious. All successful language learners, they have this passion. They're very enthusiastic for learning languages. It's all about the passion and drive, and I think all of us have this. This is very, very important. See, in a nutshell, can you explain your approach to language learning? Please comment on emotional, psychological aspect as well as the actual method you use. Well, as many of you know, I use this technique, this FLR technique, technique I've pretty much been using for a long time, and my approach is basically, it's a natural way. I don't really focus too much on grammar. I just try to learn, I just absorb things at the beginning. As a beginner, I absorb, just looking at example sentences and whatnot, and just get used to them. And then once I get to an adequate level, then I'll start studying grammar. Now, it seems that a lot of people will take this grammatical approach, and I think this is typical amongst adult learners. They will take this approach of learning grammar. So when they get to certain parts of the language where you have some complex grammar terms or just something of that nature, it's like a mind block. They can't move on. And I've experienced this before, like a long time ago when I started learning languages like Russian and Japanese. Like I tried to take that grammar approach, and when I got a grammar book, and it was like a total mind block. Like I was stuck on something. It was something about the case, the construction, and I couldn't move on. It was really bad. So from there, I started just memorizing stuff. I think that's the best thing to do at the beginning. You don't want to focus too much on the grammar. And that's what I do. That's my approach. And I believe this is psychological. A lot of people, it's hard to get past this. It's hard to get past this thing. It's this mind block. It's psychological. If you can get past that and just let it go, you'll be good. Just let everything fall in place. And then later on, things will start making sense. That's just how it works. All right, number 7. Is there any language learning method you have used and would endorse because the results have been so great? Translation, shadowing, learning with movies or music, some program or book, repetition, constant listening, etc. Oh yes, I will endorse a few of these, like the shadowing. The shadowing, repetition, and the constant listening. The shadowing has helped me out tremendously. Doing the shadowing, it's like I look at it as like an accent reduction. Like you just repeat out. You do that shadowing technique, it helps out with your pronunciation and accent. It's helped me out a lot, especially with like tonal languages. Like I've been doing it with Cantonese, and it helps out a lot. I wish I had known about these techniques when I first started learning languages like Chinese, Mandarin. I mean, shadowing is a really, really good technique. Repetition, we know Pimsleur. Like Pimsleur is a very, 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 very good repetition program. They go through the sentences, they have a conversation, and they'll break it down. They just do it over and over. Very good. I've used that a lot. And then the constant listening. Listening is very important. It's another thing I didn't take in consideration when I first started learning language. I mean, I did some listening, but I didn't do as much as I was supposed to do. I didn't do the type of listening where you go home and you put the headset on, you listen to dialogues over and over and over. But right now, after watching other YouTubers videos such as Steve Kaufman's, particularly Steve Kaufman, because he always spoke about listening. I say, wow, this guy really loves to listen to things. So, I started doing that, and it helps out. I mean, it's the constant listening is really good. It's very, very good. So, yep, I would definitely endorse those there. I think translation is good too. I don't know. I guess you could look at that as sort of a repetition. You just translate back and forth. I think that's good as well. But the shadowing, repetition, and constant listening those have been very, very helpful for me. So, okay, all right. Some learners are very good at referring or inferring grammar rules from sheer contact with the language. They observe word order, prepositions, and all sorts of details. Then they use the same information in sentences of their own. They are skilled in observation and analysis. Others know how to say a lot by manipulating few structures in as many different ways as possible. They instinctively identify which few structures are versatile and can be used over and over to say different things. They are skilled in determining what is most important in using these creative ways. Point being, some people seem to have a set of specific mental skills they apply when learning languages. Have you noticed this at all? And if so, which skills do you consider important or have yourself develop? To be honest, I haven't noticed anything. I guess I would say I don't know. At certain points of my language learning, I become very analytical and observational of certain things, like as far as the structure and whatnot. Not at the beginning, of course, but when I'm somewhere on the intermediate level, I start getting very analytical about certain things. So, I don't know. Let's see here. Most of us live. Okay. Let's see. Number 9. Most of us live hectic lives, and we can lose track of where we want to go for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes we just forget to be in touch with the language, and other times we're dealing with a huge motivational, emotional slump. How do you deal with these moments when you're thrown off your path, and how do you keep the language alive daily, regardless of your mood or whether you're caught in traffic? Well, you can't go wrong with listening. I have this 7-day rule I apply to my technique, and it works out tremendously. If something gets in the way of my language learning, I get busy. I just throw on the headset and start listening to whatever it is. I may listen to some Russian, listen to some Georgian, and I'll mark it on my list. You can't go wrong with listening. You can't. So I would advise people who are in this type of situation to just, whatever language they're learning, try to listen. Just keep. You can't go on with just listen to the language, constantly listen to it, and you won't go wrong with that. I mean, you won't be speaking, but you won't lose contact with the language if you're listening to it. So I think that can take care of that type of situation. What are the biggest mistakes people commit when it comes to learning languages? I mentioned this before. I think learning grammar, like at the beginning stages, learning language when you start learning language, you try to learn it from grammar. I think it's the biggest mistake, because you won't get anywhere. Like, I mean, it's gonna take, you'll get somewhere if it's gonna take you a long time, but it's gonna be rough. So I think that's the biggest mistake people commit when it comes to learning a language, especially at the beginning. So I think grammar is good. Don't get me wrong. I always say I like grammar, but just if I'm a beginner, I have no knowledge in the language, it just doesn't make any sense to start learning a language with using a grammatical approach. It's crazy. So let's see. 11. In my experience, one of the biggest secrets I've learned is to just let go when learning languages. It seems like when you try to control the process too much, your mind can't do any of the magical things it does. Any thoughts on this? Goes back to what we were just talking about. You just absorbing things. Don't ask too many questions. Just if you get stuck on something, just absorb it. Just memorize it. You want to flow. Bruce Lee, be water, my friend. just let it go. I mean, you're right. It's like it is magical when you do that. It's like, wow, I didn't even, it's just like, I just relax. It doesn't even feel like I did anything, because you just let it go. You absorb everything. It almost feels like it's cheating or something. I mean, it's not cheating. It feels like it's cheating. But yeah, I think letting go is the best thing to do, especially when you're a beginner. Just let it go. Just flow with it. Okay, 12. I think for many people, being able to learn a language involves a huge mental shift. Mental shift. They have to change their perceptions about themselves. Oh, this question is incomplete. I'm gonna have to skip this one. We're going to the next one. Some language learners are very insecure about actually using a language with a native speaker. Do you have any tips for these people for dealing with insecurity and for gaining communication skills from the get-go? What techniques do you use? Well, I don't know if I could consider this a technique, but well, first you got to remember that a lot of people, they want to be insecure about it, especially if they're so worried about them sounding like a fool or idiots. You know, especially adult learners, we spend too much time worrying about what other people will think about the way we speak. You know, and if you think about like a child, like children, they're totally oblivious to this. Like, if a child is speaking and making all these mistakes and someone laughs at the child and say, no, you said this way, the child won't feel like, I don't know, the child is not thinking about stuff like that. The child doesn't care. The child is totally oblivious to that stuff. So that's why children learn languages faster. But see, as adult learners, we so busy worried about that stuff, you know, it slows down the learning process. So I think the mental shift is definitely, yeah, a huge mental shift. You have to change your attitude, and you know, it's just, you know, just always tell yourself, hey, I'm learning the language. I know it's difficult. I have to make mistakes, get corrected. You know, I accept that. If you can accept that, then you'll be fine. But until then, well, I mean, it's going to be really difficult for people to actually start approaching natives to practice their language at the beginning stages. You see, a lot of people don't want to do it. They're perfectionists. They don't want to do it until they feel that they're on an advanced level. You know, they spend a lot more times in the classroom, or they go to the country. Then they're like hiding in a shell. They won't come out their shell until like later on, maybe 5 or 6 years later. But you know what? I don't have a shell. As soon as I open up those books, I'm getting to work. Like, with everything I learn, I have to go use it right away. So I would say the technique, you know, what I normally use is I'll walk up to a native and I'll ask them what time it is. Just like a regular, I mean, anybody will walk up to you and ask you if you knew what time it was, right? So I'll just use that, and then once they tell me, if I know that this person is from Korea or China, then, you know, I will take that approach. I will ask them the time, and then once they tell me the time, then I'll ask them, hey, do you mind if I ask where you're from? And then most of the time they'll tell you where they're from, and then from there you can start speaking the language to them. So, I mean, you could do that. That's probably the easiest way to fire up. I'll call it starting the lawnmower, firing up the conversation. But again, it's not going to be that easy for those who are too busy worried about making mistakes and worrying about what other people will think about them. So that's a huge mental shift there. You have to change that. So let's see, what's the next one? 14. What is the FLR technique, and how did your experience lead you to develop it? Well, FLR, first of all, is short for foreign language road running technique, and I think through my experiences of originally I was just going to learn Chinese. I just wanted to learn Chinese. That was it. I wanted that to be the only language. But then I started meeting other people from different countries, and I said, you know what, it wouldn't be a bad idea to start trying to learn their language, since we keep meeting these people. So in my experiences, I noticed that there were things I was able to say, there were things I couldn't say, and like there were things I was able to say in Chinese or I couldn't say in Japanese, and that's because I was using some of the books I was using. They were like traditional, and I try to take a traditional approach, but I found myself learning irrelevant things. So I had to jump around in the book to find the relevant things, and I had to write them down in my notes and whatnot. So from there, I said, you know what, I have to do this with all the languages I learned. I have to do this. I have to find these type of words and put them down, learn them, and then use them when I meet the native speaker. And and I'm still using that type of technique up to this point, FLR. Of course, at that time, I didn't I didn't have that FLR name. That name wasn't coined, but just recently I decided to use that name because it's like, you know, a lot of people may say, well, learning a language is not about, this is not what is it? This is not a race. It's not a race. But they're right. It's not a race. But they missed the meaning behind it. They missed the point of it. It's like if you look at a traditional book, if you take the traditional approach in learning a language, like there are certain things that you won't learn until like chapter 25 or chapter 30. You know, it's like, okay, I gotta wait until chapter 30 to learn this. You know, this is basic stuff. You know, I should know this. Like, if I'm meeting a native for the first time and I want to say this in this first encounter, I mean, I have to wait until chapter 30 to learn that stuff. So I look at that as learning stuff right away. It's fast, you know. It's not a normal approach. You learning things quickly. You know, you learning things that you have to wait until like what, the second year. If you take a language at school, you have to wait the second year, maybe the third year to learn that stuff. Conditional, you have to wait the third or fourth year to learn conditional for Japanese. I mean, just basic stuff like that. That's why it's roll running, because you learn those things that you learn later at an earlier, you know, at an earlier time. So, yeah. So yeah, just from me branching off into learning other language, that helped me to come up with this technique. I think if I just stuck with Chinese, there's no way that this technique will be possible, because I mean, if I'm just studying one language, I don't have to worry about you know, it's like, all right, I'm working on one family and that's it. But jumping around from this family to that family and then meeting all these people, then you don't have a choice. You come up with these different patterns, these different ways of studying the language. So studying multiple languages, that plays a major role in this, in coming up with different techniques. A major role. So, is that the last question? Oh, okay, yeah. In my experience, listening is far more important than people realize, because it makes everything else easier. Remembering vocabulary, learning grammar, getting the pronunciation right, etc. Do you have any thoughts on this? Yep, we just talked about this. The listening will help you out a lot. Listening and the shadowing, if you do that on a daily basis, it's going to help your pronunciation out, your accent. It's going to help you out really, really, really. It's going to help you out tremendously. So, yeah, you can't go wrong with listening. Listening, 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 listening. If you become busy, something getting in your way, you know, in your studies, just, you can't go wrong with listening. Turn the iPod on. Just listen to whatever the language is you're learning. You can't go wrong with it. But you have to listen to the language almost every day. It's very important. So, yep, that's it for all. That's it for all the questions. I think, yeah, one of the questions was incomplete, so I couldn't answer that one. So yeah, if you send me a message through YouTube, I will, you know, complete that question. I will be able to answer that for you. I won't make a video on it. I'll just send you the question through PM. So, all right, guys, those are the questions. If you guys have any feedback for me, or you want to contribute to these questions, post in the comment area. I'm pretty sure everyone else will be happy to see those. So thanks for viewing, and I look forward to you guys' comments, and thanks for shooting me these questions to answer. I enjoyed it.